From the dungeon in Dumont, down in the heart of Texas, JZ, I'm Seth Cantor up in New Jersey. Welcome to the Grand Central Sports Hub, episode 9.5, another big show for you. Knicks radio play-by-play voice for MSG Networks. Ed Cohen's going to join us. Diamond Dan will have NASCAR Coca-Cola 600 odds. We'll also talk about Tiger and Peyton Manning along with Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady. We're going to start, bench, and cut some mascots. I also want to reveal the 9 hats that I bought on a 47 brand binge last week. I bought 9 hats.
Corona spending, baby.
Corona spending. Retail therapy is true. Jason, how you doing down there, man?
I bought a $180 pair of sunglasses yesterday, so I don't know what you're talking about, buddy. We're doing well here in Texas. I am happy. We've had live sports this week, so absolutely happy with the last couple of days. Hopefully all is well up north. Just 95 degrees and sunny here is a little warm for me. That's all I'm saying. But
we're slowly reopening in New Jersey. New York's a little behind, but there are some signs of life, which is good. So I want to start off with NASCAR. And look, you can break down the race to Kingdom Come, and that's fine. The race is to Kingdom Come. But I think it's been a very good few days for NASCAR. I'll let you say great because you follow the sport on a day in and day out basis. But for me, more than anything, NASCAR has shown me that there's a path forward now for professional sports. What have you made over the first couple of races?
Yeah, so we've had 2 Cup Series races now. Sunday, we both at Darlington. Sunday was the restart of the season, and last night was the second race of the season, second race since returning in Darlington. And again, like you said, we could break down a race, and I am wearing my Napa Chase Elliott hat in support of Chase after he was wrecked last night by Kyle Busch. All aside, that doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. The winners don't matter. Kevin Harvick won a race. Denny Hamlin won a race. You know what? I'm not quite sure we're going to remember that in a couple of weeks. But what we're going to remember is NASCAR put themselves out there as the first sport to return. Mm-hmm. And in my eyes, and I try to watch from an unbiased standpoint, just from a sports fan perspective, I think they did a heck of a job, Seth. They approached the seriousness of health and balanced it with a sporting event as best as you could, and made some adjustments for that. And I think they came across really good. 7 million, almost 7 million Americans watched the race Sunday, which is what the Daytona 500 usually gets, and no race after that comes close. 2 million fans watched last night, which was the highest rated anything on TV last night. Right. So they didn't have anything. They had like WWE against them, who did like 500,000 viewers. So they have come back. Everything from the face mask to drivers having to quarantine themselves before and after the race, limiting the amount of crew members. There is an inherent risk in coming back. There is absolutely a risk. Can you do it safely is the question. The first 2 races looked really good. What happens weeks from now, safety and health, we'll have to see. But I have to ask you, Seth, you have more of an unbiased opinion than me. It's not in your wheelhouse, shall you say. Right. You're not a rabid following fan. I'm going to tune in no matter what. From your eyes, how did you feel about it?
I loved it. The race on Sunday was on in my house from end to end. I watched half of it, and the race last night was on from end to end. Did I watch every single lap? No, I didn't, but I was into it, especially with the Kyle Busch incident later in the race. But what I will say is I've wrestled with NASCAR. I've had enough room for 4 sports: baseball, basketball, football, and hockey, probably in that order. I've toyed with a 5th. It's been golf, it's been NASCAR, and it's been tennis at times, depending on what's been hot at that time. I'll tell you what, for people like me, for my demo, I think NASCAR has a real opportunity here. NASCAR has a real opportunity. And I'll tell you this, I'm looking forward to the Coca-Cola 600. I think it's on at a great time on Sunday. The little ones go into bed at 7 o'clock. I'll be able to watch most of the 5-hour race. I'm into it. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's great that they came back. And to me, there's a path now for sports to return.
I'm just going to warn you for the Coke 600, and it's fair if you don't watch every lap. It's a 600-mile race. It's a 5-hour ordeal. I'm just saying. But what else are you going to do on Memorial Day? This year, you're going to have a cold beverage. You're going to grill. You play with your daughter. You're a good father. Other than that, you're going to watch the NASCAR race. I will say, and I said it last night, it's no coincidence that after Sunday, you started to hear more news about basketball and hockey returning, because I think the other leagues are looking at this and saying, hey, NASCAR is doing it. And by the way, there's money on the table here and it's slipping away. And at the end of the day, we're capitalists and these leagues need to make money. And I think you're going to see hockey and basketball specifically light the fire here to finish their season.
It showed me that it can be done. And the counterpoint that some would make when you compare NASCAR to the team sports, well, there's more individuality in NASCAR. You can speak to this. There's still a lot of moving parts when it comes to NASCAR, right, Jason? You have pit crews. You have all sorts of different variables that you have to deal with. It's not as if these guys get in their cars and they just go race. There's a lot of preparation leading up to race day.
And they've altered. The pit crew traveling guys are not – they usually do double duty. They're not working in the shop. The shop guys are not on the road. They limited the amount of people to travel. They told the drivers, arrive 4 hours before, stay in your motor coach, in your pickup truck, whatever you did to get to the track, wear a mask, get in the car, go racing. We're not qualifying. We're not practicing. There's a lot of logistics they did change to try to make this as safe as possible, and it didn't affect the race and the product. I thought the actual, especially last night's race, which was phenomenal. It's a shame the rains came with 30 laps to go, but it didn't affect it. They're trying to make smart decisions and still put on a good show. And that's exactly what they did. And I really can't wait for Sunday. It's going to be fun. I think you'll enjoy it, Seth. Even though it's a 5-hour race, I think you're going to enjoy it.
Well, we've got a great weekend. As mentioned at the top of the show, you also have Tiger and Peyton Manning facing Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady. Baseball. Let's touch on baseball very quickly, Jason, before we get to Ed Cohen, the radio voice of the New York Knicks. I'm concerned, and I'll tell you why. The players aren't going to look at a proposal in terms of the finances until next week. They're running out of time. If they want to get into spring training by mid-June, these guys better get a deal done. And I will say this, everything we're seeing with regard to the negotiation in terms of health, in terms of the players potentially shooting down a 50-50 revenue sharing plan, we could be entering a very dark period in baseball, because I'm convinced by the day, I'm more and more convinced by the day that there's a potential for a work stoppage in 2022. That, to me, is the larger issue right now, regardless of what happens this year. Tony Clark's digging in. I don't think the players trust Manfred very much. And to me, that's where my concern is. I'm actually looking ahead, and I see some issues down the line for baseball.
Well, what did we say last week? Or I said, if we don't see progress from last Thursday to this Thursday, we are in trouble. As far as I can see it, there's no progress. We are in big trouble here. And I think both sides, and I struggled with what side, right? We talked about, do we agree with the players, the owners? Both of these sides look really bad right now, right? And it's not good optics for what we're going through as a society right now. So nobody can relate to this. It's billionaires versus millionaires. Quite frankly, we're not close to either. And I'm really not happy with this. So I think they're going to use Corona, all of this health, as a scapegoat to go into a work stoppage. And to your point, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see baseball until 2022 now. Not because of Corona, but because they can't hash out a deal.
I agree. With that said, we're going to transition to basketball. The New York Knicks radio play-by-play voice for MSG Networks. His name is Ed Cohen, somebody who I've known for a very long time. Ithaca College, class of 2005. You've also heard him on CBS Sports Network covering college basketball, Big Ten Network and ESPN, Rutgers Women, Manhattan College. That's where he got his start. Ed, thank you so much for joining us from New York City tonight. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Seth, I feel so bad. I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear you. Maybe it's on my end. I kind of timed when you stopped talking. So if it was a grand intro, I'm grateful. And I just hope we can work it out so I can get you guys in my ear. We could have this great conversation.
All right, let's take a quick pause. Let's see if we could restart with Ed in a couple of minutes right here. Jason?
Hey, live radio. I said live radio. Hey, TV, radio, maybe you're listening and you're not watching. It could be radio for you. I mean, we have faces for radio. So as we get that sorted out, going back into baseball really quick, we do a couple thoughts in mind here for a return to baseball. The owners are actually presenting a health presentation to the players to be looked at tomorrow. I guess in the scheme of things, we're talking about finances. But if they can't agree on health and resume play and based on whatever rules they're going to do for distancing, masks, testing, then it's all a non-starter anyway, to be quite honest. But I wonder if they're going to use that as a scapegoat item too. And the players just say, no, this isn't healthy. And in the back burner, it's really finance. So I think we have a problem across the board for baseball. And I won't be surprised if we don't even get past the health proposal at this point, Seth. I don't know what you think about that, but
well, I think it's going to be a challenge. I think the health issues can be worked out. I think the big problem is the revenue sharing, and the players are ready to dig in and strike that down. And to me, Tony Clark views that as a salary cap, and there's a larger issue in play here. The negotiation after 2021 was going to be tough anyway, and I think now the players are digging in. But as I said to you last week, the guy on the bread line or at the food pantry who's been trying to collect unemployment for about 2 months, he doesn't care about revenue sharing.
Doesn't care. I don't care if the players get a few million or a few less million, or the owners lose a few billion or get a few billion. At the end of the day, they've got to hash this one out given what's going on. They could lose. Remember the strike back in 94, right? 93, 94. Baseball was really struggling to get fans for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You know how they got fans back?
Well,
everyone took steroids, and Major League Baseball didn't give a damn.
Yeah.
And Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire brought back baseball in a home run chase, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's roided up. No one cared. All of a sudden, the fans are back, and baseball's like, oh, there was guys steroids? That's terrible. This is that's what took it. Now I don't know what brings it back. I don't know what brings it back if they miss a year and a half.
Well, listen, the country needs this right now, and it's not a good look. All right, let's bring Ed back. There you are.
Do you have me, boys?
I have you. Do you have us?
We are all systems go.
You know, that was an intro that Seth, you might have to redo that intro.
The radio voice of the New York Knicks for MSG Networks and 98.7 ESPN in New York. You've also seen and heard him cover college basketball on the CBS Sports Network, Big Ten Network, and ESPN. The former Rutgers women's basketball announcer, and of course, the former voice of the Manhattan Jaspers. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Ed Cohen.
Twice is better than nothing at all. Thank you, guys.
Ed, it's great to see you. Thank you. We'll touch on a few key current points, and then we'll go to the fun stuff. So a report surfaced yesterday that the NBA could be strongly considering the plan where the teams would go play in Orlando for the rest of the season. What are you hearing in terms of the NBA's return?
Yeah, Seth and Jay, I mean, I don't have anything beyond what's been reported, and I kind of caught some of your talk about the baseball side of things and the challenges that are there. Obviously, playing in home cities, the travel, where things are with COVID-19. In a perfect world, baseball could do what the NBA is reportedly going to do, which is find a spot in Orlando, whether it's the Milk House or somewhere else, get those teams down there, make it safe, make it sequestered. Problem is you have the heat in Florida and Arizona.
Yeah.
Not sustainable for all these players and teams to be away from their families. But I really applaud Adam Silver, the players, the owners, and everybody around the league, because you just have felt this sense that since day one, since it all was stopped on March 11th, that everybody was on the same page. And I don't want to take anything away from Major League Baseball or the NHL or the other major sports leagues in the United States and Canada. But to hear about that conference call where Chris Paul and LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard, among others, are getting together and saying, guys, this is what the NBA wants. This is what's feasible for us. This is less about, hey, what's best for the players in the moment. That's important, no question. But I think everybody is on the same page in terms of knowing what's best for the league going forward. And for now, if it's safe, if it's feasible, the NBA coming back would be such a great joy for sports fans and people around this country to see progress in something so visible. I think that's really important. And just the immediate and potentially long-term financial stakes in the league, if they can satisfy the games played, the playoffs, the national TV money, That's huge. And I think what Adam Silver and the NBA have done a great job of is conveying to the players, this is important not just for us, it's important for you. And if we can get through this together, the league can benefit in the short term and the long term. And I think for anybody who's a fan of the league, you have to almost take a sense of pride knowing, number one, they might get back, which is great, given what's happening with the pandemic. Number two, everybody understands why it's so important for the league now and in the immediate years to come.
And it's been a busy week for Leon Rose. He's bolstering the front office. What strikes you about the start of the Leon Rose era at the Garden?
It was a very short start, Seth. I mean, he took the job officially, I believe it was March 2nd. And by March 11th, everything had been grounded. So that took away about a month in real time to evaluate the staff, the players, the entire organization. But I really give him credit because he's done his due diligence. I think slowly but surely, the Knicks have made some moves with their front office, potentially, that will help in the long run. And look, they might get, depending on what happens when the NBA resumes play, if it resumes play, to get a little more of a look at the group he has together right now. And I think it's a wait and see. He's still evaluating, but he hasn't pushed anything or rushed anything. And the Knicks have, more than anything else right now, flexibility. And he's bringing the right people to make the decisions for the draft, free agency, potential trade options that I think are really going to be important for this franchise, not just next year, but there's some really big decisions looming within the next few years that can really shape where this franchise is going for the next 5 years or so.
We're joined by the radio voice of the New York Knicks, Ed Cohen. So from a Knicks perspective, Ed, how did you view The Last Dance?
Yeah, it's funny. You love great storytelling. And I thought The Last Dance was appointment viewing for 5 weeks. I mean, it flew by. One day, 20 years from now, everyone's going to be reminiscing about what the days were like during the quarantine. I think sports fans will say everything stopped, but we had The Last Dance. And that's what we had for these last 5 weeks. Hard to watch for any Knicks fan. Just how close they were, especially in 1993. Some of the backstories, the rivalries, the connections between players and former players. But, Knicks connection aside, it was just a wonderful documentary to watch over these last 5 weeks.
On the Knicks side of it, right, that time, and in the NBA, and it rings true today, you need a number one and like a 1A, right? So Patrick Ewing, the Knicks number one, and what I felt like, and what a lot of people say, is that he never truly had the 1A. Jordan, Pippen, every great NBA team has the other guy. Is there something going back in that time, or someone the Knicks did try to target, could have targeted, what they could have done to break up the Bulls' run and bring one home?
It's so hard to say, Jay. I mean, obviously, you can go back and speak to people who are around from that time within the organization, whether it's Ernie Grunfeld or Dave Checketts or even Pat Riley. I'm sure there were some deals that were close, but you have to remember, 92, it's Riley's first year. They established this identity as a group. And then the next year is arguably their best team in that run. As it happens, the Bulls drop the first 2 games and end up pulling together their first three-peat. So the window is so small. And you even look at the Rockets series. They had a chance to close it in 6. Hakeem blocks Starks. You get to game 7 again. You're right there. And that number 2 guy, he's one of the main reasons you're in that position. It's a night he just wants to forget. It happens to the best of players. It happens to all stars. So, yes, it would have been great for Ewing to have that second star. Maybe that's Scottie Pippen. As great as John Starks was in some of those seasons, he's not Scottie Pippen. But at the same time, what they had worked. They were close. They almost beat one of the best centers of all time. But, one game where that second guy isn't coming up in the clutch and really puts you in a hole, that's the difference between a championship and then, given the way the East was shaped in that time, the Magic being a contender, and of course, the big gun coming back. That changed everything.
Yeah, and Ed, you mentioned style identity, right? Back then, Seth, we were talking about it during the Last Dance. We noticed scores of 83-80, right? So looking back, ferocious defense, crashing the boards, that was how you won. Compared to today, it's like 110, 108. Do you as a fan miss some of that play, that game? What do you think compared to today's game?
I find it fascinating to watch. I think you even watch The Last Dance as an example, and you see the Celtics evolving into the Pistons having to play that way to beat Boston, at least in their mind. And then you look at the Bulls, and there's that offseason where Jordan says, okay, I need to get a little stronger. We have to change our way of play to beat these guys. It was unbelievable. But I also think the game evolves. And sure, there are times we all yearn for the days where, guys are fighting for every inch and the referees are letting the play. Some of the replays from those playoff games were unbelievable. To think those are games to decide champions, crazy. But at the same time, the spacing of the NBA game now, it's played so fast. These guys, athletically speaking, are at a whole different level. Their body type, the way they see the floor. You have 7-footers from Europe who are taking threes regularly. So sure, we miss the way the game was played to an extent, but if it was 1992, we might be saying that about the 1970s Knicks. So I think the game has evolved. I don't think we're turning back anytime soon, but I'd like to believe that every era is beloved for its own style of play and for many different reasons.
Yeah, back then it was going to the lane at your own risk. We're joined by Ed Cohen, the radio voice of the New York Knicks. All right, on to the fun stuff. So being a New York guy, what's it like for you every time you walk into Madison Square Garden? What is it like for you going into that building?
Seth, I'll put it this way. I remember my first Knicks game there was the second game of my first year. So 2017, it was against Detroit. It was a Saturday. We had just opened up in Oklahoma City. And I've obviously been to the Garden, hundreds of times over the years for NBA games, a lot of college games, Rangers, concerts, covering the Big East tournament, whatever it may be. And I was so nervous that night walking in the building. And I went up to the 6th floor and I said, I'm going to get there early and just go on this little stroll to take it in. And that stroll became a couple of laps around the concourse. And if you've ever been around the 100s concourse, since the renovation, they have in chronological order all the great moments in the building's history, since the new Garden opened in 1968. So that in a nutshell is what it feels like. Every night you have the chance to see something special. And obviously it's called the Mecca of basketball. I think that extends beyond just the Knicks. That's the college games that are played there, the high school kids who dreamed of playing there. It's the Mecca of basketball, and it's an amazing place to call your office for 41 games a year.
Now, we've talked about this touch and go, but I want to dig into it a little more. Who were your favorite broadcasters growing up?
It's funny because I've actually thought more about this in recent weeks, and I think part of it is the amount of old games that we've watched over the last couple of months since the pandemic and COVID-19. I'll start with here in New York. I look at the top of the pyramid, the person who probably influenced everyone below him and the ones that came after that group, and that's Marv. Because Marv, I think his sound, it's carried through generation. Guys like Mike Breen, Iron Eagle, someone who you might have heard of named Kenny Albert, his son. There's that group. My mentor is Bruce Beck, who I knew in high school and at Ithaca College. Bruce still can imitate Marv's radio ads from the 1970s on Knicks broadcasts. I watched Marv. We watched him, Seth and Jay. And I think that's something to remember is he's influenced generations. So there's a start. New York, we have 3 hockey teams. And for a time, you had Sam and Doc Emmerich on the Devils, Howie Rose calling Islanders games. I mean, it was an embarrassment of riches. Even now with Bob Papa and Bob Wischusen on the radio for football. Obviously, Gary Cohen and Michael Kay and John Sterling. I probably named them all, but really growing up here with 9 professional teams, that New York sound, you got to listen to and watch the best. And I think at a national level, Al Michaels has this way of the game feels so big and it literally feels like he's sitting right next to you. Just the way he signs off each night and comes on the air, the big moments, the Antonio Freeman drops the ball, it's sitting on his chest. All of a sudden he's in the end zone Monday night against the Vikings. You remember those moments. So guys like that. And I think you kind of steal something in a way and learn from everybody. And you hear them in these real-time situations. I think as a kid, and certainly as a professional watching with a more critical eye, they all rubbed off on me, and I'm sure so many others growing up in this area. We were really spoiled as sports fans here in New York.
For as long as I've known you, I've known how close you've been with Bruce Beck. Why does that relationship mean so much to you?
It's funny because I knew what I wanted to do when I was 10 years old, or, that probably got advanced a little more into high school. And I had been calling games on our local public access station for a couple of years at Scarsdale High School in Westchester. Is that okay to say? The Rockland County contingent?
Listen, Ed, I live in Bergen County right now, so it's fine.
I don't even live anywhere near the Northeast anymore. We're good.
Where are you now?
I'm in Texas.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, and all of a sudden, my mom's working at the youth employment office my senior year of high school, and there's an ad from Bruce, who at that point, everyone had said, if you're into broadcasting, you have to find a way to introduce yourself. And I was shy, and I didn't know the first way to go about trying to contact him. And all of a sudden, here was this gateway to be his assistant and helping out in his office, preparation, his famous manila charts, which I think made an appearance last night on the 11 o'clock news, believe it or not. I got a firsthand look at how to do things the right way, be a pro, establish relationships, treat people with respect. And that all was enhanced by him. Coincidentally, I had actually applied to Ithaca about 3 weeks before I had started working with him. I felt that was a school I was comfortable with. Obviously, Seth, you can relate, was, one of the best decisions of my life. But it's funny, I had landed on Ithaca a little bit before I had started working for Bruce, but obviously that connection only was enhanced by, our relationship. And, I interned at Channel 4 and worked with those guys, the great crew there as a PA. So he's had an influential part in my life, my career as a person and a professional.
Let's dig into Ithaca. You and I talk about Ithaca all the time. I know it means a lot to you. It means a lot to me. What struck you about Ithaca College?
Wow. Number one, you walk on campus and it just feels different, right? It feels like home. It's a different setup. It's not a sprawling place, but it's not a rolling campus in a city. Once you're on South Hill, you know where you are. As someone who is interested in doing this for a living, and you just never know what it's really going to be like, but you're just trying to find out some information. And on the tour, I went to Syracuse on a Monday and Ithaca on a Tuesday. Syracuse, Fordham, I mean, the work they've done those are the preeminent broadcast schools on the East Coast. What they've produced, the people, the lineage, the alumni connection, it's incredible. But Ithaca on a smaller scale, I think for a certain student, and Seth, I'm sure you felt the same way for a time, you feel like you can take ownership of what you want to do. And I remember that tour, the student who had been doing some sports on the radio said, hey, the day I was on campus, I covered field hockey for the first time, but I was on the air. I said, I would have jumped at the chance to do that. And the thought that you would have a leash to get on the air, get reps, make mistakes, find your voice, work on your craft. I mean, those were all important things. And, then just the friendships. It's just a wonderful place, great people who really care. So those are some of the things that I think stick with me. And, I looked up to people like you. I mean, I remember you were 2 years older and walking on campus, the thought that somebody who at that point was so established and you're calling football games, I'm learning from you. You're giving the time into some of the younger guys to work on their craft. I mean, you don't find that at every place. And I feel those are some of the things that make it a really special place.
Well, thank you. The check is in the mail. I just need your address. But for me, Ed, I can tell you that I felt like I was more than just a number.
Right.
I was on the air right away. I didn't have to wait 2 or 3 years for my shot, even though I was DJing for an adult contemporary radio station on a Saturday morning at 1 a.m. while my friends were prank calling me and giving me a hard time. I knew that was an outlet to make an impact in the sports department. And for me, that was really what drew me to the school. But Bruce, Carl Ravitch, you, Brendan Burke, John Rothstein, there are really so many guys that have established themselves as preeminent broadcasters. What does it say about the school, not only for the on-air guys, but the guys behind the scenes? What does it say about the quality of broadcaster and, let's say, production folk that comes out of that school?
Well, I think the first thing is, and some of those names you mentioned, like John and Brendan Fitzgerald, we had some really talented students who were in school with us on the news side, who DJ'd. When you work with talented and dedicated people, especially at a young age, I think it makes you exponentially better. I can say that safely. Being in your presence and in others' presence, I think as a whole, it pushes you to do good work, to be held in check as an 18, 19, 20-year-old in this industry is huge. But I think it's like anything. If you're at a place that's encouraging you to take advantage of the opportunities and you have that drive, interest level, and passion to tell stories, whether it's a play-by-play announcer, sportscaster, news anchor, whatever it may be, it was all presented to us. And I think a lot of us were able to run with it. And that's why I think it's a special place. I think if you're there with the right intentions, you have the chance, whether it's on the air, behind the scenes, whatever it may be, it's a place that gives you an opportunity. And that's something that we should all be grateful for.
Jason?
So we were talking a little before the show of some of the things that you've had the luck of calling and doing, but is there one sport that you've said, that would be kind of cool to do and different and haven't had the chance to do yet?
That's a good question. I did weightlifting for the Olympics in 2016. We were up in Stamford, Connecticut. Obviously, it was coming in from Rio. Environment. I mean, there's so much going on. So whether it's swimming or track and field, there are these thoughts in your head. What would it be like to call that? I think one that I'd be very intrigued to do, I've never done boxing. I think to be ringside for not even a prize fight, just a great bout or an undercard, whatever it may be, boxing would be the next step, would be a great highlight, because it's not easy to break into. And it's a challenge in the sense that the preparation, knowing everything about the fighter's background And then in terms of style and technique and what they want to do in that bout, I think boxing for a play-by-play guy, if you've never done it, and I haven't, would be top of the list.
There's some things that will always be exciting in a nice Saturday night boxing match. It's just kind of weird. To this day, I used to watch like the HBO boxing all the time.
100%.
But yeah, a little Saturday night boxing action kind of gets you riled up. It's fun.
And here's the thing: I don't view myself as a boxing fan. And listen, if you look at when we were growing up, I mean, the big fights, for a time it was Tyson McNeely and Bruce Seldon, Mike Tyson, eventually a transition to the Holyfield Tyson bouts, but it wasn't at the level that it was in, say, the 80s or the 70s. And it had a little drought, and it's come back with guys like Manny Pacquiao and McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, which is great to see. But I don't look at us as, the group that came up in the boxing generation. And yet when there is that big fight pay-per-view, it really is exciting.
We were talking about this beforehand, but I want to rehash it. So I'm flipping through the channels a few years back, and I land on One World Sports, and there's Ed Cohen calling a KHL game. What was that like, calling a KHL game?
It's funny. The first one I did was in 2014. So this is One World Sports, based in Stamford, Connecticut, specialized in international sports, and I was there for about 3 years, and doesn't exist anymore. Didn't end as we would have liked, but like you said, Seth, the reps were Russian hockey, Japanese baseball, Chinese basketball, New York Cosmos soccer, Asian League soccer, Champions Hockey League. I mean, leagues, honestly, many of us have not heard of. And sometimes we'd be doing 2 or 3 games a day with foreign pronunciations, and just the reps and the chops to nail the basics when you don't have a lot of information coming was exponential for me. I mean, it was really kind of a key transition in my career, even the immediate ones before the Knicks job. I'll tell you a couple funny things about the KHL. Number one, we were so invested, especially in the playoffs. You're calling these 7-game series, and we had one where SKA, which is in St. Petersburg, and had Ilya Kovalchuk and Artemi Panarin. They were down 0-3, and they came back and beat CSKA, their rival from Moscow, in 7 games. And it was like, not to dwell on it too much, it was like Yankees Red Sox. It was like the epic collapse. And I'm a Yankees fan, so it's hard to say, but I mean, this is a world away, and it was just so exciting. The other thing, and this is 2016, I had never had as much as a sip of coffee in my life, which is hard to do as a broadcaster, especially some of the crazy hours that we've worked over the years. And I remember it was game 6 between, I think, those 2 teams, maybe some others. Game 6 of either the Cup Finals or the Conference Finals, and it was a 7:30 a.m. East Coast puck drop. Those are the types of starts that we had. 5 a.m., 10 a.m., 7:30 in the morning, and I was dragging that day. And on the way, as I'm driving up in the darkness, I said, I've got to do something. So I stopped at the Donut Delight and picked up an iced coffee. And this was, I mean, a life-changing event. And sure enough, get to the studio. I'm calling the game with Tom Laidlaw, who's the former Ranger defenseman. And boom. I mean, I felt like I was the 6th skater. And sure enough, got me through the entire game. And I'm not an addict by any stretch, but I like a cup a day now. And I'd like to, for all they've done, introduce me to coffee. And for that, I'm grateful.
You're a stronger man than I with coffee. I remember my first coffee as well. I was probably fresh out of high school. I'm an addict. I do like 3 venti Starbucks a day. So you're a stronger man than I.
The venti. When someone first said, "Can you get me a tall coffee?" and I said, "What do you mean?" They're like, tall, that's small. It's like, okay.
Oh,
Couple of more things with Ed Cohen here, the radio voice of the New York Knicks. You know, Ed, we were talking about our favorite broadcasters before, and I always used to listen to Mike Breen on WFAN back when it was just 66 WFAN, not 101.9. He was one of my favorites growing up. What insights have you gained by being around Mike Breen on a daily basis?
That's a loaded question because we might need another hour. He's been obviously just listening and watching over the years a great influence. But Seth, then you meet him, and he's going into the Hall of Fame, having won the Kurt Gowdy Award, and there's that cliche, great announcer, even better person, but it's true. He's just a wonderful guy who's really seen it all from the Knicks perspective. But look, he's a history maker. He's called more NBA finals on television than anybody. And, selfishly for me, I'm spoiled in the sense that to do this job, I get to watch him and learn from him every time he's calling a Knicks game. And he's given me so much advice. I think the big thing is patience, working on your craft, learning the league, how to caption a moment. And with one word, no one is better at doing that than Mike. So I'm just, I pinch myself a lot because I'm grateful for every second that he's around calling games, and I could copiously steal a little bit from him each time out because he's that good and he's that much better a person.
What advice do you have for aspiring broadcasters?
Well, I would say the first thing is you have to be passionate about it, right? It doesn't feel like we ever go to work. It's something we love. And if you can have a job like that where it feels like you've never worked a day in your life, there's nothing better. Preparation. Obviously, I learned that at a younger age from Bruce. I think the example that, older guys like you said, showed us at Ithaca, you've got to put in the work, and preparation is everything. I think another thing too is, you have to display a level of confidence to do the job well. And the only way to get to that point is experience. And the only way to get the experience is to say yes and be willing to take on any challenge, any opportunity. And I think the last part is, look, this is a subjective business, and it's not judged on wins and losses. Relationships are everything, but the way you treat people is as well. And there are thousands of people who adequately call a game, an NBA game, whatever else. Be the one who treats your coworkers and others with respect. Treat them the way you want to be treated. And I think that goes for anything in life. So there are a couple, and I will charge you all a couple of dollars for that insight. Thank you.
That insight is transferable to many, many, many different lines of work. So
duly noted.
Last one from me, because I've been to a couple of concerts with you. Bruce Springsteen. Where did that fandom begin?
Yes. I'd say really was in college. I mean, I had greatest hits, in high school, but I'd say in college, I was a freshman September 11th. So The Rising came out towards the end of that year. And I just remember, each semester, I think I listened to The Rising almost every day sophomore year. And that led to Born to Run and Darkness. And I think we went to a show in 2003 in the rain at Giant Stadium. That was my first ever Bruce show. And then I took a class at Ithaca in which our professor, Stephen Mosier, got a shout out on this. He incorporated the Land of Hope and Dreams. And, it's a fascinating song about trusting others and hopping on board and not giving up and what hope is all about. So I'd say it started in college. I think I've been to 18 or 19 shows, and his catalog is so vast. I'm learning new things every day, and that's the beauty of his career. It's, he's the best.
You mentioned one of them. What's your favorite song? I know that's a loaded question.
Favorite song, Land of Hope and Dreams, which I think he played on one of the COVID-19 telethons that they had on one of the networks a few weeks ago. I'd say that's up there. I've always loved The Promised Land on Darkness, and there's something about the river that's, what's the one line? Is a dream a lie if it don't come true, or is it something worse? Words to Live By on the river.
By the way, I took Stephen Mosier's history of sport class. I think it was in Texter 101 with about 200 other people.
You know what class that I think we both took in Texter 101 that we probably showed up for twice and got A's?
Yeah.
Was, that Psych of Adjustment.
Psych of Adjustment, yes. I think there was a sociology class or two that I took there. I thought it would be an easy A, and I sorely misjudged the curriculum. So,
but this was the class where he brought the camels to class one day.
His name was Kenny, wasn't it? Kenny something. I remember it being Kenny. I forgot his last name.
But
I'm boring.
He had camels on each side of the stairs, which was fascinating and marginally terrifying. By the same token.
I'll tell you what, Ed, I saw History of Sport. I said, bam, this is an easy A. It was the toughest B- that I ever earned.
Yeah, he was tough. That class that I didn't take History of Sport. He's a professor named Stephen Mosier. I took two classes with him, and the best one, it might have been the best class I took in school, was Sport and Film and Literature. And it was at 6:50 on Thursday nights, my last semester, and he'd keep us till some nights we stayed till 11. And he began the semester with just very dark and plotting movies, and he slowly brought you out of the depths with Field of Dreams and The Natural and other elements, where by the end you started to see the light. It was great principles, and he had a completely different perspective where I think, and I encourage a lot of young people to think about this, take in those different perspectives, because when you're covering something, that balance will really serve you well to kind of think of it sometimes from the other side.
Ed, I know you just became a father, so I know you have some other responsibilities to tend to. So, look, we're appreciative of the time. You're a class act. Good things happen to good people. I've always rooted for your success, and I'm just so proud of what you've done, and I really appreciate you joining us here tonight. Thank you so much.
Oh, guys, thanks. It's a pleasure, Seth. I mean, I hinted at it, but believe me, when you're a freshman in school and you meet this guy who's willing to give you the time, whose voice could, crack a building, and who's great at what he does. You're a great friend, thank you. And I want to give a shout out to my son, Ben, because he has been quiet this entire interview. So I think he's the MVP.
He is, because I've got a dog whining over here who I'm sure you can hear, who lost a ball. Is it becoming a weekly segment, guys? He lost the ball under the couch. He's staring at it and he's crying at me. So your little one is a champ.
Yeah, you can't win. I mean, it's Thursday night. It's been
quarantine
tough.
Night 750.
Yeah, I reason with the dog.
I know.
Ed, thanks again. All the best.
Right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
All right.
Ed Cohen, the radio voice of the New York Knicks.
That was phenomenal, by the way. Some great insight. I love talking about The Last Dance because as a non-basketball aficionado, I was hooked. So I like talking a little bit about the 90s basketball. I find it a lot of fun. So the weekly segment we now have, Seth, of me getting Hank's ball has to happen. I'll be back in about 20 seconds. Be right back.
All right. With that said, let's bring in Diamond Dan. Diamond Dan, how are we doing tonight? Diamond Dan, you're on mute.
I was just being careful, I too, I'll be back in 20 seconds. I remember my first time too.
How's life up in Hamilton, Massachusetts now that you have sports?
It's improving. I will tell you on a daily basis. Our governor the great Charlie Baker is opening the state. First steps coming on Monday. It's going to be a beautiful weekend here in the Commonwealth, as I believe it's going to be in New York as well, maybe save for Saturday. But I think we're on the mend here in Massachusetts. We've got numbers that are good. We've got people that are ready to get out, and I just hope they do it responsibly. And if they don't, they have to go in and watch NASCAR.
And I see that you've upgraded your wardrobe with the Michael Jordan "I have a competition problem" shirt.
That's right. I don't have a gambling problem. I have a competition problem. I too, Ed, again, the radio, I have to follow the radio voice of the New York Knicks. I mean, that is a hard act to follow. Believe me, fascinating interview. I had a lot of reminiscence after the Last Dance was completed over the weekend, and it really brought me back to those days. Like I think I was telling you last week, in fifth grade, my dad, when I was living in Houston, my dad took me to a game at the Summit to see the Bulls. I mean, I saw Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen run the floor together. I feel like that's an Ocean's 11 kind of thing where you shook Frank Sinatra's hand. Like we were lucky enough. You should know better. We were lucky enough to see Michael Jordan and that Bulls team in person. That was a treat, and really, trying to compare that against what the NBA is like today for me is really it's very telling. And the fact that Dennis Rodman, played defense, like what a concept, right? And a guy that kind of without his antics, was overshadowed, was one of the best defensive players of our time. So
listen, I lived it as a Knicks fan, watching the Bulls torture the Knicks almost every year in the 90s. But at the same time, I miss that brand of basketball. I long for my youth when it comes to rooting for teams that were successful, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I thought it was a great documentary. I thought it was very well done. There are people that are out there criticizing it as a fluff piece. I mean, what did you expect? Michael Jordan had a big part in allowing that footage to be broadcast. So, of course, it's going to be told from a Jordan perspective. But I thought it was must-see TV, and it was extraordinarily well done.
Which is ironic because at the beginning of this, Seth, they were talking more about how this was going to cast Jordan in a negative light as a poor teammate and as a guy that was in it for himself, which it did. And I think we all kind of knew that Michael Jordan was a competitor and wanted to win in a way that was different than other players. And when you compare him against guys, taking nothing away from Karl Malone and Dominique Wilkins and Hakeem Olajuwon and to a lesser extent Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan compared against those guys was the ultimate competitor. So
I thought it was I actually thought, for people that say it was a puff piece or a fluff piece on Jordan, it brought up the gambling. It brought up how tough he was on his teammates. So I really don't think that was a piece that bubbled up Michael Jordan. I thought it showed both sides. I do.
And to that point, also my understanding from my guys in the City of Angels, was that the show was originally supposed to air during the NBA Finals in mid-June, and due to COVID was moved up, right? Because ESPN not only needed something to show on television, but people were yearning for a weekly serial type event, which is why 2 episodes Sunday over 5 weeks. It hooked everybody, which is exactly what we'll get to when we talk about NASCAR too. But moving that up and giving something, so my point is that the editing on some of the earlier episodes is noticeably bad, right? There's a lot of jumping around. Some of the pieces aren't exactly cut as well as you would have expected from a Netflix, ESPN co-production, but it does get a little slicker towards the end. But moving it up, I think, was, again, a public service, much like this program is to the American people.
As I return to the show here, what you don't
the dogs have calmed down.
What you don't want to know, what you don't want to be is on Jordan's hit list. Nothing will come of it. And his facial reactions on the iPad made the show. Listen, there's a reason why guys like Michael Jordan, think about other great leaders or champions, Mark Messier, guys like that win, because they demand greatness of their team, or not just of themselves. They're probably really hard to play with, but you win because they drive you to the next level. That's what a great leader does. There's a lot of great players, that don't do that, and you don't see them win championships. I truly believe there's a second part that makes you a champion, and it's how you affect other players. Do you make other players around you great, right? Do you make them better than what they are? And yeah, you're going to have some rough interactions with them, and they're not going to be your best friend, but you're going to win championships. That's what Jordan was. And if you don't like it, then you're soft.
Yeah, I don't think Gary Payton could have felt any smaller until Michael Jordan laughed at him during a program that everybody that watches sports and in our generation watched at the same time. Not only made him feel worse, but compounded what everybody already thought about him. Yes, he was a great defensive player, but probably a poor teammate. Ask Sean Kemp or Detlef about that one. I have no insight into that whatsoever. But then there's Michael Jordan sitting there, who is considered the greatest of all time by our generation and others. Like laughing at you on national television. Like that's a pretty.
I'll tell you this. Talking about laughing, because I did laugh at Jordan a few times on the show. Being a great champion and a legend and a best of your sport ever player does not make you a fashionista, if you will. I don't know what. Listen, I know '90s fashion was brutal, right? With those like wide ties and the color. What was with the 5 sizes too big suits that were bright yellow that he was wearing with like the 7 buttons going down?
I'll let the comment section take care of that.
I'll tell you what, he didn't give a damn what we think. That's what I.
That was the look,
man. Not care.
Care. The guy that can pull off that suit is also the guy that puts air on his Illinois license plate on his Porsche 911.
That was one of the best parts of the show.
All right. So a couple of minutes on each here, Dan. Let's go to
nice headwear.
We're all on Team Chase today, baby.
I don't do backwards hats often, but
do you want to go with the Coca-Cola 600 first or Tiger and Phil?
I mean, there's not much to say about Tiger and Phil except that Phil Mickelson gets to play with the greatest quarterback to ever play in Tampa Bay, and he may never play there. Tom Brady tomorrow, or over the weekend on Sunday. And they are, they're getting 160. So I don't know. Darren Ravel has a piece out on the Twitter somewhere right now about the kind of golfers that both Peyton Manning and Tom Brady are. Obviously, we know that Tiger and Phil love needling each other and are notorious gamblers, whether or not they like to. Phil talks about it, or at least gets pegged with it a little more than Tiger does. But we're not really sure. How do we know what kind of golfers Peyton and Tom are? So it'll make for great television. But I love. I'm a Phil guy. I would take those points on Phil because you're not going to get much value out of that except for entertainment.
I'll tune in. I mean, I'm watching. Why not?
And just having a live event on in your house is enough for me.
Men playing golf.
Listen, the fact we got you watching NASCAR, Seth, this is a big deal. But Dan, we need to drag him to a race when fans are allowed to return.
Well, we were supposed to go to Dover first weekend in May.
Right.
That was on my calendar. It popped up on my calendar a few weeks ago, and it was just another punch to the gut.
I'll predict this because a lot of the states that NASCAR is already going to run in or are running in, they're going to be the first ones that keep pushing and pushing for opening. I think we're going to see some kind of socially distanced crowd at a Florida race or something, whether it be July instead, right?
Apparently, fans showed up at Darlington.
Are you? They're probably watching on their pickup with their TV on the pickup truck and their grill going on the parking lot. I have no doubts about it. But I truly think the way the NASCAR it's set up, the bench seating, you could probably mark out the 6 feet spots, and NASCAR will probably take fans back at a reduced rate.
They got to reopen some of those bleachers that they've closed at certain tracks. And, Seth wasn't the only first-time real NASCAR watcher of the weekend. Ratings for Sunday were through the roof, 3.7 Nielsen for NASCAR Sunday afternoon, 6.8 million viewers at about 7 o'clock. And that's good for a 38% improvement over Phoenix, which was the last regularly scheduled race that took place back in March. So you're talking about 38% of dudes sitting around avoiding their kids who are like, "What's on TV?" and they're like, "Oh, NASCAR." So yesterday's race didn't do as well. I'm not sure. They did about 2 million viewers with a 1.2 rating. It's a Wednesday. People are pretending to work during COVID. So, and there was questions about the weather. So you're going into this weekend, that is, this is a halcyon weekend for America, Memorial Day. We thank all of our service members and our veterans and those that haven't come home, and we honor them somehow by running 1,100 miles in race cars while you're barbecuing. Unfortunately, 500 of those 1,100 are not taking place this weekend, but we are getting a 600. So let's go, boys.
5-hour race, baby. Let's do it. So going back to the, I hope a gator comes out of the lake and attacks Tom Brady. Oh God.
So, Jason, give us the rundown on what happened. When does the green flag drop in the great state of North Carolina this weekend?
Goodness gracious, the Coke 600. I believe it's a 6 p.m. The 6 p.m. start normally for the Coke 600 is what I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna have to check it out real quick.
You're not helping me out here for my lack of preparedness. So.
No, it is. It's a 6 p.m. start for the Coke 600. And Fox has it, obviously. 600 miles of racing, my friends. They are running a qualifying for this race Sunday afternoon at 2:00. So you are getting a real qualifying, no practice, and into the race for Sunday. So
all right, and it helps Fox that there is no Indy 500 this weekend, and there have been, that was the old, the Iron Man where. Robbie Gordon, Jeff Gordon, Boris said, I want to, maybe not him, but
now it's Robbie and Tony Stewart.
I think Kurt Busch did it once or twice where, they run the 500 in Indy and then they get on a plane and fly to Charlotte, and most of them live around Charlotte anyway. So they're taking fluids on the plane on the way to Charlotte, land in Concord. Kannapolis there, get over to the racetrack and race another. And I mean, that's an impressive feat. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait a little while to see that, but we're going green on Sunday, boys.
Hey, Dan, you're being heckled by the crowd. Dan shuffles his notes as if he's prepared.
I am prepared. Who is it, Matt Lawrence?
No, it's the other Matt.
Go buy a T-shirt, Matt. Jeez. You don't want to start, We can start ordering pizzas. That's all I'm saying.
So, Dan, what's your trendy pick? Give me your trendy pick for this weekend.
For those new to NASCAR, we had some interesting storylines develop over the weekend. Unfortunately, my lock of the week, Eric Almirola, top 5 plus 750 last on Sunday, did not come through. He finished in 8th place, so we were close, but close doesn't count in gambling. So you're still a loser and you're ripping tickets. So. We go into last night's race that was completed, and Team Chase, number 9 in the Hendrick Chevy, was in position to win, and the greatest heel of all time right now, one of them at least, Kyle Busch, spun that young man out and put him in the wall, to which following, in a old school maneuver, Chase got out of his car and provided a solitary finger salute to Mr. Busch. And now while we're packing races together, you take NASCAR's most popular driver, Chase Elliott, and you take NASCAR's, pound for pound champion right now, Kyle Busch, who's, really a dominant force in the sport. And now you're pitting those two groups together. And it's a shame there won't be fans in the stands in Charlotte on Sunday, because there would probably be redneck fights left and right between guys in M&M t-shirts and guys in Hooters t-shirts. So that which would also be not only colorful but really entertaining. But the storyline now is you have the popular driver, the dominant driver, and now they're beefing. So I don't think there were any surprises really this weekend. Ricky Stenhouse spun out in both races. Chris Buescher as well. Chris Buescher unfortunately dumped 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson in Sunday's race as he was positioned to win the first stage of the race, which would have been probably a good ratings getter there and make some people have all the feels inside seeing the old man with the gray in his beard win the first stage back after the COVID break. But here we are. So I don't think there's much of, there's not a whole lot of surprises in NASCAR right now. Obviously the trendy picks are Kevin Harvick again. Kyle Busch at plus 550 is leading the charge. And again, there are some track records that would go against the trendy pick in Kyle Busch. Hendrick Motorsports, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, William Byron, and Chase Elliott. So that team leads Charlotte Motor Speedway with 11 wins in history or in the history of Charlotte Motor Speedway, and Chevrolet has 24 manufacturer victories, and Kyle Busch unfortunately drives a Toyota, which is made in Texas or something.
And probably around the corner from my house.
Yeah, well, if you live somewhere near Shanghai, I'm sure that's where it's made. But it's brought over in a crate and put together in your backyard. And so reliable it is, I'm sure. Toyotas.
So what's your trendy and what's your underdog for Sunday?
So my trendy pick is to go with a plus 650 Clint Boyer for a top 5. Boyer won the first stage last night. He's a character. He's destined for the booth. He's racing for pride. I like that 650 in the top 5 for Boyer tomorrow. This is a 1.5 mile track. It's pretty open. We're talking about, not super speedway racing, but what's close to it. You're topping 200 miles an hour in the straightaways. So Boyer, he's a consistent racer. Darlington was a good start too, because you have to use, it's kind of like using, what does Bill Belichick always say, all 3 phases of the game, right? Offense, defense, and special teams. So that's really what Darlington is. You get 2 races out of the way at a track that requires you to do a lot of things. And you go into this home track, more or less, for everybody in NASCAR that performs like a super speedway. But at the same time, this is a night race. It starts, 6 o'clock, 6:30, green flags probably 6:45. So there are phases that occur during that race where the track, it's asphalt, it changes, right? So it goes from warm, the tires get a little stickier as it cools down. Anybody who's been in North Carolina in the middle of May or at the end of May knows that it's 100 degrees in the middle of the day, 80 degrees at sundown, and like 60 degrees, when you light the fire pit and bring out the Jim Beam.
The moonshine. Bring out the moonshine.
The moonshine. But there are, the teams have to kind of prepare for that, and it's not just a straight day race. So I think Boyer is in good position there. A value pick for you, I got Alex Bowman again in the 88. He performed well both races at Darlington, competed for the lead. He's got a racy car. He's a Hendrick guy. He's got history on his side. He's getting 600. He's getting 1,600 to win the race and 450 for a top 5, which is that's edgy. I think he came down from 600 over the weekend. So people are, the guys in the desert or wherever they are these days, working from home or working from the sports book at the El Cortez, are acknowledging that Bowman is racy right now. And then you got Chase Elliott, Team Chase. He's getting 900 for the win. He was right there yesterday until, big dope knocked him out. But, he's got a racy car. And then a long shot for you, Martin Truex Jr. He's the defending champion. He won the race last year. He's getting 600 points for the win. You got to factor in last year's performance. I think he also won in 2016 or 17, so it's a good track for him. New Jersey native. I like it, and we're going to get almost 1,000 miles of racing over the next 7 days. So buckle up, boys.
I will tell you real quick. As far as trendy goes, the Hendrick stable, Chase is still Bowman's fast. Chase is faster. I would pick Chase Elliott for a trendy win. However, I have a really good underdog long shot for you at plus 5,000. Tyler Reddick ran very well this week in both races, and he's in I think he's Charlotte actually has a really good record for rookie winners, including Jeff Gordon back in around 1994 was his first win, right? So I'm picking Tyler Reddick at a plus 5,000 from a long shot.
You heard it here first. I don't think there are odds for the first car out of the race, but now whatever they are, rush to the sportsbook and take them. Jason has officially put the mush tag on.
Mush has spoken, but that's our picks, Seth. There you go.
Well done.
All right, so we're gonna do 600 miles tomorrow. We'll do 312 miles on Wednesday. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be nice to see the cars open up a little bit, as like I said, drivers are really working. And credit to Fox Sports too for doing a very good job of showing sort of what the drivers are encountering on a shorter track with different bankings and the turns and whatnot. But now, 1.5 miles, pretty standard super speedway type track here. I think they're going to put on a show this weekend, And I, for one, cannot wait. Andrew, who has made a couple cameos on the show, is stoked. And I'm ready for Chase to go out there and dump the 18 right into the corner.
Nothing like a nice storyline. All right, well done. Are you ready to start, bench, and cut some mascots?
Let's go.
All right, here we go. The Philly Fanatic, the Baltimore Oriole, or Mr. Met. This is easy.
Jason?
I'm a big Mr. Met guy, especially after he flipped the bird a couple years ago. Mr. Met, you know, how could you hate Mr. Met? I think the Philly Fanatic is annoying as hell.
Yeah, but that's a legendary mascot. The Philly Fanatic.
Obnoxious.
Belly going and everything.
The Oriole looks like he got flattened by a steamroller.
Well, all right. So this is easy for me. The Philly Fanatic is an iconic mascot. It's the most famous mascot in sports. Mr. Met with the baseball-sized head. And Mr. Met's a classic mascot. The Oriole looks like a duckbill platypus.
No.
Whatever.
He's real. Looking at that thing, that's kind of brutal.
So Philly Fanatic starts, Mr. Met on the bench, and the Baltimore Orioles cut.
I go with. I'll start Mr. Met.
Yeah, me too.
Classic stuff. Baseball head. Can't go wrong.
What is Matt complaining about? We're defending Mr. Met. Jesus.
The Fanatic, man. But Mr. Met can't drive an ATV, so that's a slight in his deficit. Whatever, I don't know what you call it. But.
All right, here we go. Moving right along.
Although I have been accosted by the Oriole bird once, so
It's not
in a bad way.
Oh well.
The Milwaukee Sausages, the Milwaukee Brewers Sausages, the Washington, D.C. Presidents, or the Cleveland Indians Hot Dog Derby.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the Sausages started this whole trend, right? And I mean, anytime you can incorporate a racing kielbasa into a baseball game, you have spoken to the Polish American population of your country. So, I mean, that has to start for me. I mean, the only thing that would make it better is if it came with sauerkraut and pierogi, man. I'll tell you.
Dan, remember when they added the chorizo and it was like an uproar? You can't add a fifth sausage.
Well, apparently they were, racist or something. But if it was like another brat, they would have been like, "Oh, okay, that's great. We love brats here in Wisconsin." But then they're like, "No,
got a block of cheese to run with that."
They got to build a wall around the chorizo to keep them out of the race." I don't know, but I mean, they really started it all, right? So you go with that. The racing presidents, they let Teddy win. And the Nats were cursed for like 5 years. Teddy, of course, the greatest president to ever live from the great state of New York. Now he wins, and the Nats are the world champions. And, Pittsburgh, another great city. But, come on, those hot dogs are second rate to those sausages.
They are. I mean, really, like the OG race of the sausages. The president's race is great. The hot dogs look like a bunch of knockoffs. So they lose.
I will. Hold on, can I wait 1 second? Steven Strasburg's first game, 14 strikeouts against the aforementioned Pittsburgh Pirates. I was in the house with Mrs. Sadowski for that game, and they had pierogies dressed up, right, in like cardboard, right? It looked like a high school art contest or something like that. And I'll tell you, I forget which president it was. I think it was Thomas Jefferson was rounding the first base corner there. And one of the pierogies hit him so hard you could feel it where I was sitting. So
how long did it take for Teddy to win a race? It took years, right?
Well, it was like a thing, right? It was like, let Teddy win. And then it was like, but do we want Teddy to win or do we want the Nats to win and Drew Storer not to blow saves? So by the time they finally came around to letting Teddy win races, the Nats were not blowing games to the NL Central in the playoffs. So now that he's in, they added William Howard Taft. Another great president, big dude. Because originally it started with Mount Rushmore, right? And that was why it was done that way. And then it became like a thing. They picked on Teddy. He became a mascot. We actually, it was shticky, right? For a team that put 7,000 people in the stands in the middle of August. So the president's race became more salient than the actual baseball game that was in progress. So once they let Teddy win, then fortunes return.
This is the best start bench cut we've had.
Dan's passionate about this one.
Great.
But, yeah, these were my neighbors, right? So like, I'm sure the guy that played Teddy lived down the hall from me when we were.
He probably walked to the park in a suit.
So to me, the presidents have become the most iconic mascot race in the country.
Wow.
So aside from the Rockland Boulders, New York Boulders mascots, with the hot dog bun, the donut, and the everything bagel. That race nightly at Palisades Credit Union Park.
That's a donut? I didn't know that was a donut.
It's a donut.
Donut.
Rockland Bakery. I mean, mad respect.
So aside from that, this has become the most popular mascot race in the country for presidents. So I'm choosing the presidents. The sausages, they started all this, so I'm going with the sausages. And Jason, I think you said it, not much originality with the hot dogs. So the hot dogs are being dumped.
I mean, what else do you race around Pittsburgh? Felons? I don't know.
Why does a hot dog? So here's the biggest problem with the hot dog race. There's a hot dog with ketchup. That's like a criminal act.
I knew you would feel strongly about that one.
It's criminal. No one should put ketchup on their hot dog.
I have ketchup on my hot dogs.
Well, I'm not friends with you anymore.
It turned out just fine.
You guys aren't even allowed to eat hot dogs.
All beef.
Nor am I.
Where's Youpie?
All right, Youpie's coming up. Youpie's coming up. Ready? Here we go. Now for the hockey portion.
There we go.
Hard mention cut. Ready? Here we go. Iceberg, Gritty, and Youpie.
I love Gritty.
Gritty's got a mouth, man.
Gritty's outstanding.
Gritty looks like he was scribbled together by some kid in grade school.
Well, nothing better represents the city of Philadelphia than that monstrosity.
Gritty has brought back the golden age of mascots. That thing is an instant legend overnight.
But he's not even the best mascot in his city.
I'll tell you, Iceberg looks like a mess, though. Iceberg looks like a mess. It looks like he needs
Oreo.
Yeah, Youpie number one.
Youpie's number one. Youpie's versatile because he was the Expos mascot for so many years. And has Youpie always been the Canadians mascot?
No, I don't think he was until the Expos left.
Till the Expos left. All right.
He was like he was given another. Basically, he was furloughed to the Canadians.
I don't know. I mean, Youpie's number one.
Youpie.
Iceberg. It just looks like not much thought was put into Iceberg. I mean, it just looks like a Halloween costume. I feel like
it's crossing.
I feel like Gritty's a little more well put together, but the Pennsylvania mascots, the Pennsylvania hockey mascots, are not very good.
I love Gritty. Gritty's my starter. That thing is
really?
It is so unique because they're not even trying, like a lot of mascots you're trying to play to kids, like make it look goofy for kids. They just went out straight nightmare fuel and they said, we really don't care. This is the representation of Philadelphia, and it is. Look at that thing. I give the Flyers a ton of credit for putting that thing out there, and people love that dude. Gritty is awesome. Dan,
any thoughts?
I mean, I disagree, and Youpie is not exactly child friendly. And look at him. I mean, if you saw that guy in the street, you'd walk to the other side and go down the sidewalk if you were allowed to. I mean, never trust a ginger, especially a French one.
We got two gingers in this category.
I know, but
if you don't like gingers, are you picking Iceberg?
Come on, man. Youpie is OG. You got to go with that. And I mean, Gritty, hilarious, and he's more of a sign of the times, like his whatever. And I get it. Philadelphia is so gritty, so edgy, but. Youpie is the original gangster.
Gritty looks like someone who robs you on the Ben Franklin Bridge.
I bet you that guy puts roofies in drinks and bars in Montreal.
Oh, boy. This is going way off the rails now.
All right, what's next?
This is the best one we've had.
Actually, I didn't do as many this time. We only have a few more of these.
Okay. Three guys sitting around talking about cartoons.
It's a 3-hour show anyway, so you're good. Iceberg looks like Jean-Claude Van Damme kicked them every day since was shot.
Sudden Death, the movie Sudden Death.
Sudden Death.
Franco, nice one.
All right, here we go. The Toronto Raptor, Benny the Bull, and the Suns Gorilla.
Benny the Bull. Well, the Suns Gorilla goes old. They get the start because he does flips, and I mean that's like a thing. Grew up with that. KJ, Dan Marley, Barkley, Sir Charles. I don't care about the other two. Benny the Bull. The Bulls didn't even need a mascot when they were good. It was when they were not good in the ensuing time after the breakup, the Last Dance breakup. They needed a mascot with their, kitschy black jerseys to bring people in. And Canada, we've had enough. I already gave love to Canada. We don't need any more.
My only question is the Suns gorilla, probably the best basketball talent out of all of them. All I remember is him going on the trampoline, doing the slams. But why did the Suns pick a gorilla?
I don't know. To me, he's the best one out of the three, though. And the Raptor can elevate, and I do think the Bulls having a mascot was a little hokey. Could you imagine Benny the Bull while Michael Jordan was playing? That wouldn't pass.
No. It would be like, that's why the Yankees don't have a mascot.
And there was that abortion back in 1981.
Dandy?
Yeah. Doodle? Dandy?
I think it was Dandy. Whatever.
Like 5 games or something. That was it.
What's next?
2 more. Back to baseball. The Pirate Parrot, Mr. Redlegs, and Wally. Dan, I know you have certain feelings about the Red Sox.
The Red Sox spend more money. Like, again, they're one step away from putting the Zippo's bail bond sign on the center field wall. They try to squeeze as much revenue as they can out of that stupid ballpark of theirs over there in Back Bay. The Redlegs, that is legit. That mustache is dope. He's wearing the pillbox and the old school button down. Love it. The parrot, whatever. But the Red Sox have like 15 mascots. I'm surprised. Like every day's got a new jersey, whatever. I don't know. Like I appreciate the fact that they made him and they incorporated him into the Green Monster Wally. That was great marketing. But whatever. Johnny Redlegs over there wins it for me, man. Look at that guy.
Jason?
Yeah, Mr. Redlegs, the winner for sure. After that, the Pirate's pretty awesome. I'll take the Pirate to sit to bench. Wally needs to go somewhere.
Well, it doesn't look like, listen, Mr. Redlegs is number 1. With all the marketing the Red Sox do and the creative concepts they come up with, that's the best they could do for a mascot? Really?
Yeah, it's Wally, the Green Monster.
Yeah, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, but I don't know. It just looks like it just.
What, do you have a big lobster?
I don't know. It just doesn't look like they put much thought into the design of it. But the Pirate Parrot looks like a flat-out mess. I wouldn't expect anything less for a team that has a $35 million payroll.
Right. Oh, boo.
All right, Mr. Redlegs, get the start. I'm going to take Wally, and then, sorry, Pirate Parrot, you got to go. All right, one more. Ready? We're going to go to college sports now. And the focus of college sports will be animals, real live animals. Okay.
How could you not take the Calgary Flame guy?
Ooh, Uga.
Oh, yeah.
The Georgia Bulldog, the Auburn War Eagle, Boomer and Sooner, the Oklahoma Horses. Boomer and Sooner.
Well, after this year, they had to cut Boomer and Sooner because they fell over. I would like to – can I throw in some honorable mentions here that are not noted on this?
Yeah, you could do that. Yes, that's right. You reminded me of that accident they had. That's right.
That's right. So, you have Ralphie, the Buffalo out in Colorado. Ralphie runs around the field every game. And in Jason's backyard, you got Bevo. Where's Bevo the Longhorn? Or Reveille the Collie down at College Station, man.
Matt Soriano brings up a good point. How do you not pick the Notre Dame Leprechaun?
You said it was focused on animals, right?
Yeah, but I could have gone a little deeper. I didn't think this would go as well as it has, so I didn't really pick a lot of these. I only did 6 of them tonight.
Well, the Boomer Sooner thing is cool. There's historical reference there. I get, Uga is Uga. And the War Eagle, great. Like, that's cool. Uga is number 1 in my book here. Then we'll go with the War Eagle and then the Sooner and Boomer because they failed this year.
Yeah, and me and dogs. So,
all right.
Hey, Seth, because we brought it up.
That's that.
Share my screen real quick.
Make sure you got the right screen focused on there. There you go. Danny,
the Yankees had a mascot for like 2 days in the 1970s.
What?
Right?
Can we just what? 1979. Okay.
79.
What is happening here?
What is that?
What is going on?
The best part of that picture is the giant old scoreboard back there with that humongous Marlboro advertisement. Dandy.
I can't. I'm disturbed. Please.
I think it was kind of like it was like if the Philly Fanatic and Yuppie had a baby, that's what it would look like.
Only lasted for what, 2 days, I think, right?
Yeah, it wasn't long.
Scary.
Wasn't long. All right, wrapping up this day.
This day in sports.
There wasn't much. 1881, the U.S. National Lawn Tennis Association is established in New York City.
Yeah.
1922, momentous day in the history of the Yankees. Colonel Jacob Rupert buys out Colonel Cap Houston's interest in the Yankees for $1.5 million.
Well, that's a steal.
That's a steal. 1966, Muhammad Ali TKOs Henry Cooper in 6 rounds to win the heavyweight title. Sorry, Jason and Dan, for this one. 79, the 4th consecutive Stanley Cup title for the Canadiens, who beat the Rangers in a 4-1 series win.
The Rangers had some really, really great teams in the 70s.
And then in 97, before joining the Yankees, Blue Jays pitcher Roger Clemens beats the Yankees for his 200th win.
That's it?
That's it. There wasn't much. I combed through the list like 3 times. I tried to find some things that were relevant, and today's a dud in the history of sports.
Holiday weekend. You're going into holiday weekend.
So we have another NBA broadcaster next week. Back-to-back NBA broadcasters.
It's going to be the NBA inside stuff.
Ahmad Rashad. Willow Bay. Willow Bay still got her fastball, by the way. Same.
I remember that show growing. That was my first job out of college. I was a production assistant for NBA Inside Stuff in Secaucus.
No kidding.
No kidding. Yeah.
Did you have that awesome fluorescent T-shirt that Ahmad Rashad was wearing around?
No, I was like the 25th man on the Yankees roster. I don't think they ever took my highlights.
You're on the bus back and forth to Scranton?
I met Ahmad Rashad maybe one time.
Go ahead.
Well, what's interesting about the Last Dance there is that I did not realize that he and Ahmad Rashad and Michael Jordan were like bros.
They were tight.
They were super tight, apparently. Like there was that one, the one image of them of Michael sitting in like his room in the locker room before Game 7 in '97 or '98, whatever it was, and like Ahmad's in the room with him, like talking to him like he's his best friend. I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah. They definitely had a tight relationship, that's for sure.
The more you know.
I watched Inside Stuff because didn't it come on like after Saved by the Bell and California Dreams?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I would just the TV would be on NBC and I'd be like, oh, all right, Inside Stuff, whatever.
Yeah, Saturday morning. Yeah. And they'd go through like the week of basketball, and Ahmad would always go like, and Tuesday, Monday. Like, I remember that.
There was only Saturday, so that was a great block of TV. Those shows, there's only one better block of TV in our childhood. TGI. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was the NBA. That was the NBA version of This Week in Baseball.
Right.
Yes.
Only a little more trendy.
But that was the thing. Like when we were, in the late '90s, I mean, the NBA was king, and that's the one episode that followed the '92 Dream Team did a fantastic job of really explaining how basketball, the NBA, mainstreamed American sports with like popular culture. And the McDonald's promotions, Gatorade, Nike, which could have been Adidas. I bet they really regret that. But that discussion is really, you don't think about it because sports permeates our culture so much, as we've learned the hard way over the last 3 months. But it really started with that Dream Team and with Michael Jordan's, Be Like Mike and all that other stuff. So you got to respect that for what it is. And it is, I appreciate that the show wasn't just about Reinsdorf and Krause and how they, what happened at the end of that run and that amazing dynasty, but, really about the cultural impact that, Michael Jordan himself had on sports and, the world for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Very well said. All right. So next week, this is a guy that I went to West Point baseball camp with back in 1996. Wow. His name is Travis Demers. He's the Portland Trail Blazers radio play-by-play voice. Back-to-back NBA broadcasters.
Rip City.
Show. Rip City.
Good stuff.
So Travis will join us next week. Another New York City guy. Very happy for his success. And that's going to be next Thursday night at 8 Eastern.
All right.
Final.
Go ahead, Dan.
Like I said, we're going into Memorial Day weekend. Sadly, I'm not packing up the kids and the family to head to Newport, Rhode Island this weekend, as we have for many years, and enjoying a Narragansett and a cup of clam chowder on Bannister's Wharf. But, we still, even in these challenging times, as they say, stop to remember the great sacrifice that made this country what it is. And I've been watching Mad Men, right? And part of in first season, thank you, Matt Soriano, by the way, for the recommendation, among others. But in the first season, they're talking about working with the Richard Nixon campaign. And the owner of the firm at one point says there are still people that don't believe in America. And it made me stop for a second. It made me realize that, right now we're in, there are people out there, and I understand it's a tough time for a lot of people, not just in the Northeast, but across the country. But, there's at the end of the day, as they say, I thank God every day that I get to live in the United States of America and raise my kids here. And there were great men and great women supporting them who got us here. So to all of our veterans, thank you, and enjoy your weekend. And we will remember those that got us to where we are today, that we could deal with a situation that is seemingly, impactful at this time, but it wasn't, it's not necessarily a world war or, something that the greatest generation had to deal with to save the world from imminent demise. So, that's what I got.
Well,
and enjoy the race this weekend.
Yeah.
Jason.
So David Doobie sent me something today that really spoke to me, and I'd like to leave us with a visual thought. Seth, if you'd share my, can you get that? Share my screen out. And hope this speaks to you too, friends. And I hope you have a safe week, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.
My final thought: I went on a hat binge about a week ago. 47 brand hats. I love the 47 brand hats. I'm giving all these random companies plugs on our show, and they're not even paid sponsors.
Brockton,
so I want to show you guys my
hat.
Do they have a store up there where you can actually go in and buy all these?
So there was a store in Danvers, Massachusetts at the North Shore Mall, but it closed even before COVID. So I think like many companies right now have transitioned to online sales. That's where their bread and butter is.
I want to show you all the hats that came in. My Yankees hat. Fitted too. I love the fitted hats.
Ooh. What's on the back? What's on the back there? Oh, I like it. Very nice.
All right. That's number one. Brooklyn Dodgers.
Oh, baby. Class.
Number two.
Like it.
I'm taking a lot of heat because I'm a Yankee fan and I'm buying hats for other teams. I'm at the point where if I have to justify being a Yankee fan to anybody, it's not even worth the conversation.
Right.
So if I like how it looks, I'm buying the hat. Milwaukee Brewers.
I love it. Love the yellow. Yellow is definitely to be used more.
Can't see it. What was on the back?
So you got the front, and then this nice baseball on the back.
Oh, like that's the baseball that's in the glove, right?
Yeah. And because my Expos hat isn't fitted, and I love paying tribute to the Expos. Got another Expos hat.
Yeah.
The Washington Nationals. Love it.
All right. I was in Kansas City a few years ago, and I love Kauffman Stadium and the barbecue.
Good stuff.
Yeah, baby.
Jason, you'll appreciate this one. The Kansas City Scouts.
I love it.
We're at a cup of,
Look at that.
cup of coffee in the NHL in the mid-70s, right?
That's great. That's good. I like that. Like that logo.
So I took a beating on this one from my wife because she thought this was a Mets hat. New York Giants. Pay tribute to the classic teams.
Love it.
All right. Here we go. Two more. Padres.
Oh, I like that color scheme for the Padres.
That's why I got it. I like the color scheme. And now this one they didn't have in my size. I usually buy fitted hats, but I love the logo, so I took what I could get.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, love it. Colorway is nice too.
And those are my 9 hats that I got.
That logo just reminds me again of Chris Sale being unable to fit into his jersey, and he's like the skinniest guy alive. So lucky him.
As soon as they have an extra large with that Sox logo on it, I'm buying it. So
Do it.
that's the deal.
Great show tonight, fellas.
Excellent
Yes.
choices.
And I'm $200 poorer because of it now.
Yeah, well, but the enjoyment of wearing those hats and the memories they bring last forever.
I'm showing these late in the show because I think my wife's asleep too. So
It's only 9:30.
next up's a golf bag, Dan. You have to help me buy a golf bag.
So, like, to that point, for all of our golfers out there, we've been sharing some ideas, Seth and I, about golf bags and Titleist. I'm a Titleist guy myself. No endorsement or anything, but they just came out with a very, very lightweight carry bag, which for the sign of the times is actually, I'm sure, TaylorMade and Wilson and Nike and everybody else that's in the business is going to do the same thing. But if you're going to be forced to carry your bag on hilly courses and places on the Northeast or wherever you may live, a lightweight bag's going to come in handy, and that's going to make those 10 Miller Lights you stuff in there a lot lighter. So just think about that. $200 well spent.
I did hit the links this week.
Did you? How'd you hit them?
47 on the front 9. It was pretty bad.
First time out season.
But it was a very hilly course. There was a very tough wind. It was Rockland Lake, the championship golf course. In suburban New York City, and it was a very hilly course. And it's funny. The first time you go golfing, you forget about the things that you needed to do at the end of last year. 2 things I needed to do. I needed a new hand cart, and I needed a new bag. So here I am lugging this bag where the bottom's falling out of it, and I had no hand cart walking up and down hills. So it was tough. It wasn't an accurate representation. I feel like if I would have had those 2 necessary items, I probably would have shot maybe like a 43. Probably would have about 5 strokes better.
Definitely worth 5 strokes, without a doubt.
So anyway, but it was nice to go out and do something normal.
Yeah, I bought a sandwich the other day for no reason. Just because.
All right, guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Be well.
Adios.